Good morning. Welcome. My name is Carolyn Runnells, also known as Lady Carolyn, and my little niche in society is bringing the lesser-known stories of history to life to you. And today we're going to be talking about the Titanic and Margaret Brown. And also with me today is Linda Abrams, and I am going to let Linda tell us about herself.
My name is Linda Abrams, sometimes called QE1, because of a costume presentation I give called Queen Elizabeth I in her own words. History fascinates me. My background includes a UCLA law degree and a private pilot's license. Some of the other presentations I give are on the history of aviation. But today, we're not here to talk about planes, rather boats, or more particularly, the most famous boat in history, the Titanic. We are here to honor the Titanic and Margaret Brown. Carol?
Thank you. So, we've learned a little bit about Molly Brown, but we're also going to figure out who Margaret Brown is and how did the legend become fact. Happens a lot in history. But the first place that I want to talk about is the Margaret Brown house, or known as the Molly Brown house, and Linda just happened to be there back in February this year. So I'm going to let her tell about the Molly Brown house.
Gladly. I was there this last February in Denver, and as you can see, it is a beautiful old stone mansion. But even more importantly, the story told there shows a very different Margaret Brown than what Hollywood has shown us. On the left, Molly Brown from Hollywood, frivolous, boisterous, semi-illiterate. On the right, the real Margaret Brown. And at her home, there's a video running, very detailed and well documented, that portrays a very different person. Articulate, active in women's suffrage and politics and charity fundraising. Are there any questions? Yes.
I know times were different then, but can you tell me why Molly and JJ didn't simply get divorced?
Yes. They were Catholic, and not just nominally Catholic. They were very active, visible in their community, active in their church, and in fundraising activities. Divorce was out of the question for them. And the notoriety would have been harmful. In fact, JJ felt that women's names should only appear in newspapers on 3 occasions: birth, marriage, and death.
Today, we are fortunate to be at the Ritz-Carlton here in New York. I'm about to interview Mrs. J.J. Brown about her experience aboard Lifeboard 6 and the Titanic and being saved by the Carpathia. Mrs. Brown, could you tell us about that experience?
Well, the whole thing was so formal that it was difficult for anyone to realize that it was a tragedy. Men and women stood in little groups and talked. Some even laughed as the first boats went over the side, and all the time the band was playing. After a little while, I helped put some women in a boat. I remember that last woman. She was French, and she was very excited.
But Mrs. Brown, how did you end up in the lifeboat?
I had noticed 2 men following me from place to place as I talked with the women here and there. These 2 men followed me to the upper deck and carried me down, practically threw me into the boat with the words, "You are going too." I can still see the men up on deck, tucking in the women and bowing and smiling. It was a strange sight. It all seemed like a play. It did not seem real. Men would say, "After you," as they made some woman comfortable, and then stepped back.
Well, what about the other passengers in the boat? What was their reactions?
Although we were in a boat and we were safe and we were at work, in a few moments the man in the back of the boat began to complain that we had no chance. There were only 3 men in the boat with 21 women. For at least 3 hours he seemed to break the monotony of it, and we stood him patiently. Then after he had told us that we had no chance, and told us many times, and after he had explained that we had no food and no water and no compass, I told him to be still, or he would go overboard. Then he was quiet. I rowed because I would have frozen to death. I made them all row. It saved their lives.
When you saw the Carpathia, did you see it, or how did you know it was there? I mean, what was your feeling?
It was sudden, like a streak of lightning over the edge of the sky. We saw the searchlight of the Carpathia.
Oh.
I knew we were saved, and I began to look about me. She must have been 10 miles away then. I made them keep on rowing, for I knew they might even then freeze before we were reached. Oh, then the most beautiful dawn came upon us. For the first time, we saw where we were. While near us was open water, on every side was ice.
How long did it take for the Carpathia to reach you and to save you?
Oh, we did not wait for the Carpathia to come to us. We rowed toward it. We were picked up at 7 a.m.
Mrs. Brown, why were you on the Titanic? Was it for pleasure? Were you on business?
No, I was
suffragette movement, perhaps?
Not at that time. I was hurrying here to see my son, who is in Medford, Oregon. He was married very young and went out there to live. His baby is ill, and of course I had to get home to see what I could do. I left my daughter in Paris, and I'm going back in May. We are to visit friends in London.
Mrs. Brown, aren't you sort of afraid to get on another ship to go across the ocean? Are you not afraid of more icebergs?
No, I have not been made afraid by my experience. I have no fear of water. I simply did what was to be done. For 15 years, I have labored in Denver with Judge Lindsay in rescue work. And when my time came, I did what I could.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I appreciate you meeting with me and telling me your story. This will get printed in the Times. And again, I want to thank you for your efforts in helping with everything you did in the lifeboat and on the Carpathia. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Mary Llewellyn?
No,